evening. I'd like to call today's study session meeting to order. Could we please start with a roll call?
Mayor Coombs?
Here.
Council members Bagley?
Here.
Christensen?
Here.
Finley?
Here.
Moore?
Here.
Peck?
Here.
Santos? Here. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Okay, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, if there aren't any agenda items, you're going to move to, actually, does anybody care if we put the special reports in front of public invited to be heard?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So, go ahead, Ken. Okay. Councilmember Christensen?
Because this is a meeting tonight of great community interest, and because the actual thing is a response to a community organization that spent a lot of time creating an ordinance that has never been made public except to those of us here, I would like us to codify in writing the things said tonight regarding policies and practices regarding the city's undocumented immigrant community, and I would like that to be made public along with the actual ordinance that we're responding to, with the approval of council, of course.
Wow.
In other words,
yeah.
I want the city policy put in writing so that it's consistent and people can refer to it. And I also want the ordinance that we are responding to be published so people can compare it, because people don't know what we're even responding to.
Okay. So Polly's made a motion or direction. Councilmember Peck?
Thank you. I think we just want it to be on the agenda, to be able to have a written policy based upon the facts that we hear tonight, and compared to, like Polly said, to the ordinance that the organization who put it together gave us. Because what they're asking for is a sanctuary city with policies and procedures. We have policies and procedures, which Chief Butler is going to tell us about tonight, but they're internal policies. They need to be, we're asking for them to be written policies so that they can be referred to.
Okay.
To put that on the next agenda, or an agenda, to bring back to us.
Councilmember Bagley?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. At this point, I don't know if I'm for or against, because our policies might not be enough. They might be too much. They might be inadequate. And so, I mean, yeah. But maybe what you should do, you're reserving the request, perhaps.
Okay, I will reserve.
And so that way we can decide after we hear from Chief Butler.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. Let's hear what we do before we decide. All right, let's start with, I guess, since I got the list now, public invited to be heard. And the first on the list is Sonia Marquez.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Thank you so much. First of all, Sonia Marquez, 1012 South Kaufman Street. I just want to say and recognize the National Police Memorial Week and thank all of our police officers for their service. I just learned that today, and so I think that's pretty awesome. So tonight's a really important night. I know you all received our ordinance, and we're going to learn a lot tonight, and we're looking forward to that. We have a lot of people here who are in support of us learning more about what our current policies are and what it is that we already do. I feel like Longmont is a very safe place. We've said that, and I feel like we know that. But when it comes to our undocumented community, I feel like the issue is that we are not clear, and the policies or the internal policies or practices are not transparent. And that is what we need. I need to be able to deliver this message, and I feel like the message is being delivered. I feel like, Chief Butler does a good job. He walks every weekend, and they have that personal interface with the community. But I think that there is still a lot of fear amongst our immigrant and undocumented community. And I feel like you all have a job to do in keeping our community safe, and we all have that job, and we all have that role and responsibility. But when there is things that are unclear, and there are internal practices and policies that isn't clear, that isn't clarity, and that isn't transparent. And so I hope that we can keep our comments brief tonight to allow our Chief Butler to be able to address and to be able to answer these questions. But overall, we are asking that we come up with an ordinance where it is clear as to what our role is. The term sanctuary, if you all notice, the ordinance that I proposed didn't have a name to it. I don't care what you call it. I think that people are getting very caught up in that term, and that is not what it's about. It's about what are the actual procedures, what are the actual policies. Call it what you want, but we just need something that is going to provide transparency to our community members. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Benavides.
Yes, Honorable Mayor, Honorable City Council people, esteemed City Manager, Dan Benavides, 804 Grand Avenue. And I thank you for having me here this evening, having us. And as I thought about this thing, sanctuary city thing, I want you to know that we have come so far together, this community. It is so beautiful, thanks to all of you. What a beautiful, great community we live in. I know when I got here 5 decades ago, I had to live on East of Main Street. And a lot of those bad things, but we together.
Hey, I live East of Main.
Oh, that's right.
That's a great thing.
Some of you still have to, but that's okay. We're going to free you. But anyway, we live here, we all together. And when I noticed Martha's here tonight, and others from El Comité, we had problems in our city that were very bad, but together we solved those problems. We did it together like we're doing now. Okay, in regards to Sanctuary City, I would just ask that maybe we don't brand ourselves by the name Sanctuary City. Why wave a flag? By that I mean we already are there. We have a caring, beautiful community. I've been walking the walk with all of you and with Chief Mike Butler going on 3 years now. I've talked to over 1,500 Latino people. Most of them can't speak English. And they get the feeling that they belong. And I asked them, if you had any contact with the police, have any trouble with the police, tell me about it. I asked them that in front of the chief. A lot of us know, for the most part, nearly 100% of the people we talk to love Longmont, Colorado. And they come from Brighton, they come from all over the state to live in our community. We are a belonging, caring community. And we have one of the lowest crime rates in the entire state of Colorado. I think we're second. And there's a gated community that doesn't have to worry about that. So I just ask you, look at it, be transparent, yes, but I just hope we don't raise the flag, because I could just see a nice officer down here at our courthouse. If we start waving the flag as a sanctuary city for political reasons, we don't want that. We already are a beautiful, caring, giving community. And let's keep it that way, and we'll all work together. They have great ideas. We'll work together to make this even better. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening to me this evening, and thank you for caring for us, all of you. You make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Linda Bittner.
Hi there, Linda Bittner, 9455 North 89th Street. I'm not here to speak about the agenda item, but I do want to make a pitch to you about connecting up to the city's sanitary sewer system. I live in the Schlegel subdivision in the southwest part of town. It's an unincorporated county enclave located between Nelson Road and Clover Basin Drive and a little bit east of Airport Road. When the houses were built in the 1960s, they all had septic systems because no public sewer system was available. My husband and I are interested in exploring a connection to the city sewer line. I've been talking with Bill Taylor, an engineer in the Public Works Department. His preliminary research shows a line in the city neighborhood just to the east of us with what's called a stub out directed to our neighborhood. The distance from that line to our house is around 300 feet through an unpaved emergency egress road, which makes it feasible. Bill's research concluded that we are not eligible for connection because our system is not failing. Knock on wood there. He suggested I come here tonight and ask for your help. I want to be proactive about this because our system was installed in 1966 and the typical life of the system is about 30 to 40 years, so we are on borrowed time. I've been asked, why not just wait until your septic system fails? Well, I've got two reasons for that. First, no, all respect intended here, but the realistic timeline to get a connection established is 2 to 3 months. There's engineering, the work has to be done, then the city council has to approve it, which means multiple readings, vagaries of schedules, and then, of course, we have to get excavation bids, schedule the work, and so on. And if our system were to seriously fail, with wastewater coming up out of the ground or backing up inside the house, it's going to be an emergency, at least for us. You know, waiting 2 to 3 months to get it fixed would force us to move out, and in the meantime, the place would be a health hazard. Not to mention the smell of sewer gas would be really unpleasant for our nearby city neighbors and anyone using the Willow Farm Park, which is only a quarter of a mile away. The second reason is that right now there are 2 adjacent neighbors who have expressed interest. One of them was able to come to the meeting tonight, and they'll wave at you. Another one is buying the house next door to me, which, for good or for bad, it failed the septic inspection, so now they are forced to do something, either put in a new system or connect to the city sewer line. And then there's yet another person who's also interested. So if we can all go together, it will help reduce some of the infrastructure costs, make it a little bit easier on the city in terms of engineering. So in closing, my request is for you to direct staff to work with us on connecting up to the city sewer system. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Marcia Dawson. Or excuse me, Marshall Dawson.
Close enough.
Sorry.
Hi, Mayor Coombs, council members, good evening. I'm Marshall Dawson, 2006 Glen Arbor Court. I'd hope to speak after hearing what we're going to be listening to tonight, but unfortunately the agenda wasn't in my favor there. Councilmember Bagley, I wanted to key off something that you said a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to have to paraphrase here. But all illegal aliens are not Hispanic. All Hispanics are not here illegally. All illegal aliens are not living lives of crime, and all criminals are not illegal aliens. In mathematics, we have a method for visualizing problems like this called a Venn diagram. You see, you start putting stuff on paper, and then you can draw circles around it. Based on various groups. And where you have overlaps or intersecting groups, sometimes you can gain insight there. So my concern with this group within a group is the people who are here illegally and who are engaged in or have committed crimes. Now, I don't believe this is the same group that the pro people are trying to protect. I believe they're honestly concerned about those who are otherwise living normal lives. I'm sure it would shock my opponents to know that I have a friend who's here illegally. It would certainly be a sad day if he was deported, but that really doesn't change my position at all. So how do sanctuary cities tend to behave? Well, they aim to protect those who are otherwise behaving like citizens. But the result is they go out of their way to protect the bad ones too. They tend to undercharge or ignore criminal offenses. They try to avoid submitting fingerprints to federal agencies. Why is this especially bad? Well, the average hardworking illegal alien can live almost anywhere, like Aurora, although not a sanctuary city, but who has a reputation for tolerance. But the really bad ones are attracted to sanctuary cities. The really bad ones will be attracted to Longmont. I like to test ideas by applying an extreme hypothetical and see if I still like my position. So let's consider this together. We all breathed a sigh of relief when this character, Christopher Lawyer, was not going to move here. But let's say he was an illegal immigrant from Europe. If he settled down here, wouldn't we call ICE at the first opportunity we had? His mother lives in Boulder, too. Would we lose any sleep over breaking up that family? Well, surely we can all agree. We would all call that good riddance. So that's my extreme hypothetical example, and that's all it is. My point is this, though. We currently have options, if we choose, for helping the federal government remove some of the most dangerous people from our Colorado communities. We may still be considering a statute to voluntarily strip ourselves of that option. So at this point, I will still ask the council, please don't remove this valuable tool from our local government and law enforcement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sherry Malloy.
Good evening, Mayor Coombs and City Council members. Sherry Moy, 2113 Rangeview Lane. Happy World Day for Cultural Diversity for Dialogue and Development. Item 4A. I have been present at the City Council meetings of late that discuss the topic of Sanctuary City. I have been saddened and discouraged at comments made by some of those opposed to this forward progress. Some comments have been hurtful and are largely based on non-factual information. One of the areas where it is obvious there is quite a lot of information is crime. The fact is, people who don't have documentation are far more often the victims of crime than perpetrators of it. The independent, nonpartisan Policy Institute Center for American Progress researched the baseless claim that crimes go up once a municipality became a sanctuary city. They found there are, on average, 35.5 fewer crimes committed per 10,000 people in sanctuary counties compared to non-sanctuary counties. The data proves that when local law enforcement focuses on keeping communities safe rather than becoming entangled in federal immigration enforcement efforts, communities are safer and community members stay more engaged in the local economy. This, in turn, brings benefit to individual households, communities, counties, and the economy as a whole. Hearing from Chief Butler tonight is an important step in this critical discussion that needs to continue. It's good to clarify that Longmont Police Department, our Longmont Police Department, has no interest in checking people's immigration status. But we all know that ICE is unpredictable and can pull rank. This is why people are terrified. Mayor Coombs, you were correct, as quoted in the Times Call, when you referred to this issue as overblown. There is a lot of fear on both sides. Sadly, the fear by those who are undocumented is far more reality than the white privilege fear that is based in bias and misinformation. I had a friend who is undocumented, literally crying in my arms last Thursday, thanking me for being my voice and saying, "I cannot speak out. I'm so scared." We know kids who are Hispanic and being bullied in Longmont. We know we had a family threatened with a hateful letter. The youth center has seen a significant spike in suicide assessments. We must continue this conversation. It is cold comfort to a kid whose father might be hauled off for no criminal act to know. It is cold comfort to a kid whose father might be hauled off for no criminal act to know that the people and police are generally nice in Longmont. I ask you to take the next step beyond your study session tonight by continuing this discussion and to thoroughly explore enacting policies that ensure the safety of all of Longmont's residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Vella.
Hi there, Thomas Vella, 1265 Carolina Avenue. I just wanted to also talk on the subject and kind of agree with what Sonia was saying, that there is a lot of confusion. There's a confusion on where we stand. Where are we as a city and what do we really stand for? There's a lot that goes on the national level. But what is happening here locally? What is driving us here locally? And I think we need to be very clear and we need to be inclusive. I think the facts that were just presented about the fear that people have is weighing everybody down. There's so much fear about the illegal immigrations. But I would like to see the City Council and ask you to have integrity, love, and compassion drive what you do going forward. That is what's going to be on the right side of history. This is a time when we need to be on the right side as a community, and it starts here. It starts at the local level. And I hope that we can see that. I feel like I am somebody who represents Longmont. My father was born here. I was born here. My grandfather came here when he was 6. I'm half Mexican. I'm half white. I feel like I've been raised in this community, and I've seen it come a long way, but there's still more to be done. My good friend Danny and Sarah Hernandez had a note sent to their home. I'm sure most of you saw that in the Times Call. They wanted to make America great again. What's that say? It says fear. It says that intolerance. That's never been our way of doing things. That's never been the right side of integrity, of history. Integrity is. So I hope this council will take that into fact, that we've come a long way, but there's more to do. And if we set the tone right, there's going to be a lot more good that comes from it. We've already come together after that note. We now have longmontloves.org. If anybody would like to join, we have signs out there. We have members. We're coming together as a community the way that we should come together as a community. So I'm encouraging you guys to do the same. Come together. Stop the fear. Stop worrying about what will happen with money. I know some sanctuary cities are worried about losing their funds. That's not. Be on the right side of history. Have integrity. Mathematically, I heard some things there. Only light can take out darkness. Let's be that light. Let's be that shining light. Let's end the confusion. Let people know where we stand as a community. And please, I hope that integrity guides what you guys do today. And I was just wondering how many people in here are with me. Can you stand? Can you stand? This is your community. This is us speaking. This is what we're here for. We need clarity. We need to know where we stand. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Nick Barbosa.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I think I'd like to request that you provide this context that we're hearing about for people to have a conversation. We have a lot of people saying sanctuary city. We have a lot of people who don't understand that. I was just speaking with my dad actually today, and I asked him, what does sanctuary city mean to you? It had nothing to do what the proposal that at least I've heard about but haven't read said. And I think that a lot of the questions that we're hearing and a lot of the negativity, it's in response to this lack of understanding of what we're talking about. And I would really urge you to provide that context so we could have a dialogue and open discussion. And I think that's really all I really want to say today. Again, Nick Barbosa, and I guess everyone says their address because I haven't done this before, but 1618 24th Avenue. But please, provide us with an opportunity to speak to one another about the facts, about what's being proposed, because we don't have that right now. And I think we're going to have a good presentation tonight as a beginning of that. But the basis is really where we need to go first. So thank you.
Well, that was kind of the point of the whole meeting, was to provide everybody so we can all get on the same game page and understand what we do and then figure out where to go forward from there. The next person is Strider Benston.
Wow, so cool. A lot of good words tonight, including my former next-door neighbor, Nick. Strider Benston, 951 West 17th Avenue. Throughout the entire thing I was going to say tonight, because I saw the topic and I came down here and I thought, well, some smart person once said that those who do not know history are condemned to repeat it. Last Friday in the New York Times, there's a column by Henry Scott Wallace, the grandson of the United States, of the Vice President of the United States of America, Henry A. Wallace. I've got his book here, one of many he wrote, Democracy Reborn. I'll give you a little plug from it. Fascists always create enemies to target and create hate, to attack people. Immigrants, gypsies like Victor Hugo, black people, anyone who can be called other. I'm quoting from Henry Wallace, 1944, during the war. The really dangerous American fascists are not those who are hooked up directly with the Axis. The FBI has its finger on those. The dangerous American fascist is the man who wants to do in the United States in an American way what Hitler did in Germany in a Prussian way. His method is to poison the channels of public information. If we define an American fascist as one who, in the case of conflict, always pursues money and power ahead of human beings, there are several million fascists in the United States. But most of them are supporting the war effort. They are patriotic in times of war because it is to their interest to be so. But in times of peace, they follow power and the dollar wherever they may lead. American fascism will not be really dangerous until there is a purposeful coalition among the cartelists, the banksters and the oil companies, the deliberate poisoners of public information, and those who stand for the Ku Klux Klan type of demagoguery. Let us understand history so we don't repeat it. Thank you.
Thank you. Shelley Bassman.
Hard to follow, Strider. I'm Shelley Bassman, and we live at 3414 Lakeview Circle. I'm going to start with our daughter-in-law teaches in Denver, and I asked her at Bruce Randolph School. She has it's a diverse community, and I asked her if any of the children. She's a secondary teacher, so they're teens. Had been impacted by the new immigration policies. And she said, yes. This is some months ago. I haven't. She said that 2 of her students came to school. Their fathers had been dragged out of the house at 4 a.m. These teens are traumatized. They are American citizens, which means that their parents have been here for 15 years, if they're ninth graders, 14 years if they're ninth graders. And it breaks my heart. And then I understand that here in Longmont, a father was picked up after dropping his daughter off at school. Since the beginning of humanity, people have cohabited, and they have looked for better places to live, move to, and raise their families in safety. I'm sure it took quite a while before the cohabiting part morphed in or evolved into that you go to the government, you get a piece of paper, then you can go to the justice of the peace or clergyman and get married, and then you're registered in some book. And I can't remember if we have a piece of paper at home anymore. For someone who has sought a better place to live, has lived there for 14, 15 years, American-born, American citizen children. My thought is that we can have a common law citizenship category. They have not broken any law other than coming here. And I'm glad that Longmont is studying and pursuing how common law citizens are viewed and treated in Longmont. In researching this, I called Lafayette, and they declined to pass a sanctuary city ordinance, but they did pass a resolution in writing, putting in writing what their policies are. And I would support that. Thank you.
Yvette Laria.
Good evening. Yvette Larrea, 620 Grandview Meadows Drive. I would like to ask the council to say no to the dehumanization and criminalization of the most vulnerable people on our planet. We are a country of contradictions. We say no to bullying, yet We have many bullies around us, both public and private. And becoming a sanctuary city is a way to no longer stand as a bystander to bullying, but to confront the bullying and say that we are not in agreement. I also think that becoming a sanctuary city or clarifying those policies and procedures as a city is also saying no to fear. We're also saying to the federal administration that they must take to task their own policies and procedures and create a comprehensive immigration policy rather than bullying its way through the states to enforce its laws. These are times to build bridges, to live closer and in harmony with each other, with the planet, and with all life. Mother Teresa once said, we can't do great things. We all can't do great things, yet we can all do things with great love. And I ask you tonight to do this with your hearts, with your minds, with your spirits, and with your consciousness, and say no to bullying throughout our country and in our city of Longmont. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that'd like to speak at Public Invited to be Heard? Okay, I'll go ahead and close Public Invited to be Heard, and we'll move on to the special reports and presentations. So we have a proclamation designating May 21st, 2017 as World Day for Cultural Diversity for Dialogue and Development. Sam Safey, Chair of the Longmont Multi-Actual Committee, and others are here to accept the proclamation. So I'll go ahead and read the proclamation. A proclamation designating May 21st, 2017 as World Day for Cultural Diversity for Dialogue and Development in Longmont, Colorado. Whereas May 21st is recognized as World Day for Cultural Diversity in Dialogue and Development, and whereas this day encourages people and organizations from around the world to support diversity, and whereas community members can take concrete grassroots actions to support diversity, and whereas Longmont's Multicultural Action Committee works to promote cultural understanding, inclusion, and involvement to create and maintain a welcoming community for where everyone belongs. Now, therefore, I, Dennis L. Coombs, Mayor, by the virtue of authority vested in me and the City Council of the City of Longmont, do hereby proclaim May 21st, 2017 as World Day for Cultural Diversity for Dialogue and Development in Longmont, and I invite all citizens in the community to recognize the value and encourage community members to visit a museum dedicated to other cultures, invite someone from another culture to share a meal, watch a movie, or read a book dedicated to another culture, or visit a place of worship different from your own. So Sam, would you like to come down and say a few words?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for the proclamation that you just read. I was privileged to be at a teacher appreciation evening, and Chief Butler was the main speaker, and he shared not necessarily statistics, but something which stuck in my mind. I have repeated a few places already. He said for every incident that makes the papers, our paper, local papers, there are 1,000 good things which are happening in our community. I talked to him afterward, a few weeks afterward. He said, well, that's actually a conservative number. There are a lot more than 1,000 good things happening. Well, I'm glad to report to you, Mr. Mayor and members, that our small committee of multicultural committee, some of us are here tonight, are among those who are doing the 1,000 things with your support. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you like to have your members come in?
All right, you guys ready? 1, 2, 3. I'm going to take one more different setting.
All right, now we've got our item 5A.
Mayor, item 5A is a review of the City of Longmont's policies and practices regarding the city's undocumented immigrant community, and Chief Mike Butler will present to start us off.
All right.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm Mike Butler, Public Safety Chief. I don't think I'm the only staff person speaking on this issue tonight. I also believe that Director Karen Roney is also going to be speaking somewhat about some other areas outside of public safety that speak to this issue. So, and in my listening to all the comments here, public invited to be heard, and throughout the community, there's definitely two perspectives that seem to be somewhat polarized. And I am going to give information that I think will clear up some misinformation, and also talk about some of our policies and things that we do here in Longmont with Longmont Public Safety. First of all, our mission, our motto, is policing in partnership with the people. That has been our mission and motto for the last 20 years. And everything that comes from that, every single policy, every single procedure, every single practice comes from that mission and motto. So I just want you to know that that's the premise, that's the context for who we are in our community. We do believe in partnerships. First policy that I want to make very, very clear to people, although I think people know this, is that Longmont Public Safety has made it clear over and over again that Longmont Public Safety is not interested in anyone's immigration status. And we're also not interested, even though we're talking about immigrants tonight, there are a lot of folks in our community who see themselves as marginalized or disenfranchised, or because of their gender, or because of their preferences in life, or because of their race or color, or whatever that might be, that we'd make no differences whatsoever with anybody in our community. Tonight we're talking about immigrants, but I just want to make that very, very clear to the council, certainly to the community, that those are reflective of our mission, reflective of our policy, reflective of procedures, and clearly reflective of our practices. All of you, and I think it was published in newspapers, saw an email that I sent to my staff, our staff, in public safety, dated March 15th, before all of this became probably a controversy or an issue of subject for conversations in our community. And while I reiterate this over and over and over again in terms of who we are in the community and our practices, because of the tenor related to immigration, specifically undocumented immigrants, I wanted to let our folks know again, this has been a repeated message, is that we are not interested in anybody's immigration status. And I can tell you now that, and I also directed them to let everybody that they contact in the community know. So there is a communication link going from public safety into our community about that particular policy. And as Dan and a couple of others have talked about, we do walk neighborhoods every Sunday. All of you have joined us. A couple of you have joined us a couple of times. Assistant city manager, the city manager, and I think a few people out in the audience have joined us as well. And since the election, we've been mostly focused on neighborhoods that are predominantly Latino. And as Dan indicated, we run across a lot of folks who don't speak English. We don't ask immigration status. But we let every single person know that they have nothing to fear from Longmont Police in terms of their immigration status. We not only let them know that, but we also request that they let everybody they know, their friends, their family, their neighbors, their employers, whoever they know, that that's who we are in Longmont in terms of being public safety. And so we do see the fear. There's no question. There's no doubt about it that that fear exists. But there's also a lot of communication going on, and I want to make that very clear too. I've also done a number of public presentations in the community, mostly to predominantly Latino audiences. I've spoken at Casa de la Esperanza, and some of you were there too, right after the election, and made that point very clear. So the message is in our community about who Longmont Public Safety is and what our policy is around undocumented or immigrants. The one thing I also want to make clear that there seems to be a lot of misinformation about in terms of what is the law, what is the regulation regarding folks who are undocumented. It is a federal civil administrative regulation code. It is not a criminal law. It's not a law that any local district attorney, any local sheriff, or any local police officer or police departments or sheriff's departments or district attorneys can enforce. By the Constitution, and the Supreme Court confirmed this, that regulations around immigration are federal issues. They're not state issues, and they're not local issues. So there's nothing, even if we wanted to, that we can do to enforce any law regarding undocumented immigrants. I just want to make that real clear to everybody. We are, and I've heard over and over again, we're a nation of laws. We're a nation of rules that we have to be thinking about. Well, we are, and there's no doubt about that. But that isn't a criminal law. It's a federal administrative civil regulation code. It's very similar to the tax code. And so if someone violates the tax code, there's nothing we can do about it. And so the immigration law is on plane and in that realm in terms of what's out there. I want to talk a little bit about crime in Longmont. I'll go back around 10 or 12 years. I'm just going to fast forward to today. Crime has dropped in our community by about over 50%. At one point, and by the way, we're not the only people that get the credit for this, and that's where I'm headed with this particular part of my conversation. This community gets the credit. And in large part, I also want to say that the folks who are undocumented in our community get the credit as well, and I'm going to explain that. There used to be around 450 gang members in our community, self-identified gang members. Now there's around 60 gang members in our community. There used to be a significant lethality and seriousness related to domestic violence in our community. That has plummeted in the last 10 to 12 years. And so the point I'm trying to make here is that crime has decreased. Our community is one of the safest in Colorado. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we have the kinds of relationships and the kind of trust that we have in our community with everybody. There's hardly a group that we don't have a liaison or partnership with. And that includes just about everybody. That's important for us. It gets back to our mission, policing in partnership, or public safety in partnership with our people. And so part of what helped us in terms of solving and reducing the gang issue and reducing the domestic violence issue were folks who were undocumented, folks who had trust in us, folks who felt like they could talk to us, folks who felt like they could access our services, folks who felt like they could come to us and say, here's some information as a witness or as a victim. That's mightily, mightily powerful in terms of the capacity and our effectiveness to do our jobs. And so my sense is that if the undocumented immigrants in our community did not trust us, that crime would begin to increase, that issues with gangs may go back up, and that the severity and lethality of domestic violence would begin to go back up. Now, they're not the only community in our town, but they are here, and they represent a portion of our community. And so we've had that experience in terms of what's happened in our relationship. And so what I've heard from over time is that the police are more interested in gaining their trust than they are enforcing the law. Well, we are interested in gaining their trust. And we have every reason to be wanting to gain their trust, because that's where the product of safety ultimately comes from, because they want to access our services. They want to let us know what's going on. I read the ordinance, and what I saw in the ordinance was a lot of language around how our police department, what the relationship between our police department and ICE should be. And one of the programs that the federal government has that's run through ICE is called a Federal 287G program. And what that program does is it trains local police officers to basically assist ICE in rounding up folks who are undocumented. So another policy within public safety, and that is we are not joining any 287G program. And so we've made that very clear, and I've made that clear in the community. And we've certainly made it clear with our staff. So those are very, very important policies, very, very important procedures that emanates from a philosophy about who we are in our community. But the other thing I also want to say, and is that there's also been some language that we're soft on these folks, and that if we were to become a sanctuary city, that crime would begin to go rampant here. And I totally disagree with that. I will say that regardless of who you are in this community, that the laws apply to everybody. And so notwithstanding what your immigration status is, if you violate a law, you're subject to being prosecuted by the criminal justice system. So I want to make that clear as well. So I don't have much more to say than that. I just wanted to make sure that you all knew that, the community knew that, and I know that there's some questions that you all have around this for me as well. But there's my presentation, and that's what I wanted to say tonight.
Well, I guess my first question for you, just to clarify for the public, I already know the answer, is we do follow all state and federal regulations. I mean, obviously, if there's a federal warrant for somebody we're holding, we would honor that, right?
Yes, we do. And, one of the things I will go back and say in terms of when we do work with ICE, if there's someone dangerous in our community, and I can somewhat define dangerous as people who are serially hurting other people. And that could be in the arena of drug dealing, people who prey on the vulnerabilities of others. It could be a violent felony crime. But yes, we will actually help ICE out in terms of removing those people from our community. But I also want to say that we can't remember, we've had some conversations internally, we can't remember the last time we were contacted by ICE. We can't remember when that actually happened. But typically ICE will call us and let us know what's going on, and they will want us to help or something like that. But it's been so long that none of us can remember when that occurred. So,
okay. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I just had some clarifying questions as well. I know the answers, but I do think others need to know. If, for example, you arrested someone and it turned out that they were a felon and they were undocumented, would you contact ICE at that point?
Our procedure right now is that we don't do that.
You do not?
What we do is we send them, we arrest them and transport them to the Boulder County Jail. And Boulder County Jail provides information to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation that ICE has access to. So we're typically not in contact with ICE for someone who might be undocumented.
So as you have not heard from ICE about rounding up folks, you haven't contacted them either. Isn't that correct?
We can't remember the last time that happened.
Okay.
So.
And as you may have heard at the beginning of our meeting, several council members want to talk about codifying some of our internal policies. What's your feeling on that?
I don't necessarily want to get ahead of the council here, but since you asked me.
I just would like your opinion.
I don't think we can mandate or force goodwill or caring or connectedness. In doing so, I think what we end up doing is actually lessening our capacity to do that in our community, because I don't think this is an issue, this is where I'm coming from, I don't think this is an issue that I would like to see our council mandate. Here's what we need to do in our community, and then our community say, well, the council's mandated something from on high, and now we're going to be okay. I'm not in favor of that. And you've heard me many times in presentations talk about sometimes how we get into this mode of either passing laws or putting together policies or stiffening penalties as if they will be an insurance policy that will protect us from the human condition, or that they will be the starter of how we connect or how we belong. I have never seen those things happen. And so I think the conversations and the invitation I would make to people in our community on both sides is that I think we have to invite people who don't think like us and have the conversation about how we find common ground in terms of what this looks like. And I think that's going to be the way, I think that's the way we need to go. And so I don't want to offend anybody on council, but that's been my philosophy, that's been my thinking for many, many years.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Councilmember Christensen?
Sorry. Yes, I do have some questions that are coming from CERC, and most of these you actually have already answered, but I believe what people want is something in writing so that they are clear about it, because otherwise they just have the memory of what we talked about tonight. And so I think that is what people want to have, is something in writing of what we actually do right now, both from Human Services and from the police department. So you do not really collect any data of country of origin for anyone who's arrested, is that correct?
Well,
unless they are unless you have a federal warrant.
Actually, on arrests, we do ask for place of birth because it's required on the fingerprint card by the FBI. But it's no data. It's not data that we do anything with. We send it along with the fingerprint card to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
Okay. Oh, so that goes to the FBI thing at the state.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we do not. The Longmont Police Department does not. Is going to continue to defend the constitutional rights of the Longmont community members by refusing to honor ICE holds unless they are accompanied by a judicially approved criminal warrant.
Actually, it doesn't apply to us. It applies more to the sheriff.
Because it's the county? Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Does not apply to us.
Okay. Okay. And you don't notify ICE of the release dates of individuals in your custody because is that because they're going over to the state?
Again,
I mean, the city.
That's the sheriff's department's responsibility. It's not ours. And the sheriff does that for everybody in the county.
Okay. And we do not use any taxpayer city funds for the enforcement or to assist ICE operations. Is that correct?
And the only exception to that would be for people we classify as dangerous to our community.
Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you want to turn off your mic, please? Councilmember Peck?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I also have some questions, but I want to just make a statement that the fear really is real. It isn't something that is from the media. Some of it's from the media, but for me, it's from the past 2 years of our leader passing down very vitriolic terminology about people who have brown skin, basically. And when you have the leader setting the standard, then that affects you. So I also think that we never hear about Australians who are undocumented or British people who are undocumented or Finns or Swedes or Australians. Because why? Probably because their skin is white, and that's just my assumption. So it feels a little bit like profiling, and I think that is the fear. I have complete trust in you, and I think we have a great city, but we do have to acknowledge the fact that I don't live in their world. So when people come to us and say, what's being said is scaring me to death. So that, and as a representative of the people, we need to pay attention to that. So I do have some more questions that, actually you saw these questions because we emailed them to you. So I'm just going to ask, are you going to refuse to provide ICE information regarding probation appointments, domestic violence, and DUI classes, court dates, etc.? Or do you provide any information directly to ICE from databases?
We don't.
Okay.
And that question has more to do with another part of the criminal justice system, probation.
Probation, okay. Do you believe that city property should be considered sensitive areas? For example, this building, the library, courthouse, as far as ICE going in and arresting someone?
Well, I think you have to look at it practically. Those places are open to the public.
Mm-hmm.
Those places are open for anybody else to go, and there's no reason why an ICE person couldn't go there. I think it would be difficult for us to say everybody else can go there but ICE people from ICE. They're public places, and people have a right to be there.
What is the maximum sentence for municipal violations in the city of Longmont? Currently, sentences of 365 days can trigger deportation consequences. Would you and the police department support lowering the maximum sentence to 364 days to make sure that it's ICE and not the city of Longmont that is deciding who is a priority for deportation?
The highest jail penalty within the city of Longmont is 180 days.
Okay.
So we don't meet that criteria.
Do you have policies that are in writing that making it clear that non-citizens are not to be discriminated against and are offered the same protections under equal protection requirements? Are these just internal policies or assumed policies, but are these written down?
There is a directive from me about how we will work with people who are undocumented. And so that is in writing.
Okay.
The other part of that question has a lot to do, I believe, with Title VII in terms of the legal classification of protected classes. And so in that way, we follow the Constitution.
Okay. And one more. Do you currently have policies that prohibit federal immigration agents from accessing individuals or using city facilities or resources for investigative interviews or other federal immigration enforcement purposes?
No, we don't have a policy for that. But I just want to make it clear again that in the way we're operating within public safety, we typically don't develop policies for things that don't happen.
Okay.
Or things that aren't likely to happen. And so, or improbable possibilities as well. I mean, I could fill this room with those kinds of policies for things that are what ifs or could possibly happen, et cetera, et cetera. And so we know we don't have a policy.
Okay. I think one thing that is happening is watching the wave across the country and just making sure that we're in a safe zone as far as residents go, whether you're documented, undocumented, LGBTQ, whatever, that before this wave of cruelty, to be quite honest, is coming toward us. I think that there is like a proactivism of what will you do? What are we doing? And if it could be, and I think that's why we're asking for something to be written down so that El Comité could have it, so that CERC could have it, so that when someone comes and say to their organization, they can say, here's the policy, and we stand behind our chief of police.
And let me just say that if the council directs us to write policies, we will.
Okay.
But I will also say that none of the things that I heard or saw in the ordinance would keep ICE from coming to this community if they wanted to.
Yeah, I think they just want to know what you will do in writing. Okay. Thank you.
So just an observation, it sounds like from your life experiences that you think that creating laws in ordinance is not necessarily an effective way to eliminate fear and hate. That's kind of what I'm reading between the lines of what you're saying, that's in your experience that there's more proactive ways to eliminate fear and hate than just creating laws.
Yeah, I just don't believe you can either legislate or develop policies that will either minimize or eliminate fear. I think that has to come from another kind of dynamic in our community.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Any other questions? All right.
We have Karen available to make some quick comments.
Sure.
We have Karen available to make some quick comments, but we wanted to answer any questions you may have regarding the other aspects.
Okay.
And at that point, others may jump in.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Karen Roney with the Community Services Department. So I did just briefly want to highlight some of the information we had in your council packet, that there are indeed federal and state immigration laws that impact some of the public services that we deliver here at the City of Longmont. And so I wanted to just talk about how those play out. So as you know, the city is a recipient of federal funding, primarily in our community development block grant, our home dollars, and those federal dollars that come to us as an entitlement city do have restrictions in terms of basically folks who are adults 18 years of age and older and what they are eligible for in terms of receiving specific kinds of assistance. So as we had in your packet, that people that are applying for our programs through CDBG, through our home funds, we are required by federal law to basically prove that adults who are receiving those services are documented and lawfully present in the United States. It's the same for our state dollars that are passed through to the city. So our disaster recovery dollars from CDBG that come through the state, and some of our down payment assistance dollars that come through the Department of Local Affairs. Again, those are also these same laws I just talked about apply to those, and we do indeed follow those laws and require that that adults who are applying for those benefits are lawfully present in the U.S. You know, I did want to note that that certainly 3 years ago or so, a little less than 3 years ago, when we had the floods here in our community, and some of the state and federal dollars might not have been available to help some people in our community who were not documented that what we, our commitment is to do our best to serve everyone, and in those cases that we were able to access private funding that really would help be able to apply and provide assistance for people who were not lawfully present and didn't have documentation to prove they were lawfully present in the U.S. So I just wanted to comment on that. Our local tax dollars are also, the state immigration laws apply to local benefits and local programs that we provide to members of our community. Again, there are a list of those things in the state statute, and they basically mimic most of the benefits that are outlined in the federal law. What we really find is that there are also the opportunities. There are various lists of those services that are exempted from having to prove lawful presence in our community, and most all of the services that we provide directly to the community through Community Services Department are on that list of exempted services and and programs. We also have the requirement through this same state law for the human service agency contracts that we enter into with nonprofit agencies, that they also have to meet the threshold for making sure that people who receive funding from the city pass through to these nonprofit agencies meet the requirements of the state law. Again, they also are basically staff can work with them on making sure that we clarify what services that they provide are exempted from the state statute. And again, most of the services that are provided by the agencies are exempted from those from what's identified in the statute. So that's the quick overview. I can certainly answer more questions and to get into way more detail that if you're interested in that. I think the other thing that I wanted to to talk about is you heard from the Longmont Multicultural Action Committee a little bit earlier this evening. And certainly that group has been in operation for since 2003. And it is indeed a group of incredibly committed people that have been working tirelessly since that time to really promote ways that we build bridges, that we bring people together who represent all cultures and all interests here in the Longmont community, so that we continue to be a welcoming community where everyone feels like they belong. One of the things that the Multicultural Action Committee did discuss early in 2017 is how it could be more visible. Sometimes we're a very well-kept secret, and that is not particularly helpful, and particularly in these times that we are dealing with and the things that we have been talking about for months. And the Longmont Multicultural Action Committee has really stepped up its commitment to be more vocal, to be more out there. So the proclamation that they brought before you this evening is one of many efforts that they are they're committed to bring their voice and to provide opportunities for engagement. And certainly one of the things that they have talked about that has been mentioned earlier here this evening is they certainly are interested in helping to bring together people in conversation. We have done this several times in the past where about 10 years ago, we helped sponsor the dialogues on immigrant integration and pull together folks in dialogue around that issue, and certainly they are positioned to be a partner in holding and sponsoring ongoing community conversations. If that is something that I think they're interested in doing, council might have an interest in in supporting that too. And then the other thing, and Eugene, you can add to this, that there is, do you want to talk about the contracts? Just the general contracts? Or, so there's one other requirement from the state that that basically requires that the city and any contracts that we do enter for services in the community is that there is a requirement that that those contractors have to prove that they are not employing undocumented workers to provide that service. And Eugene can add to that if he would like, if I didn't get that correct. So that's a quick overview. I would be glad to answer questions or sit here.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I had a couple. Do you know of, because you know all things, about, do you know of if there are any programs to help the undocumented folks become documented in Longmont?
I think there's people behind me that are making sure I don't forget. Yes. So we do have some of the agencies in our community. So El Comité is certainly one of them that works with undocumented residents in our community to help get them prepared for taking the test and to help with the paperwork and to help people to move toward citizenship. And so
I personally would like to know more about that because I don't know enough about that. So at some point, maybe someone could educate me on that.
We would be glad to follow up with that information.
And do you know, and perhaps Eugene could also help tell me if we would or could lose federal funding if we became a sanctuary city?
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney. So I am aware of the district court opinion in the Santa Clara, San Francisco case. That was at a preliminary injunction stage, although the judge in that case was quite confident that the executive order was unconstitutional for a number of reasons. The executive order would withhold federal funding for noncompliance with certain aspects of immigration statutes. And, there were probably 5 different reasons why he couldn't do that. Separation of powers, spending powers are reserved solely to Congress. We cannot co-opt local governments in service of a federal program under the 10th Amendment. It was unconstitutionally vague. It did not provide procedural due process under the 5th Amendment. So any one of those reasons, constitutional reasons, would invalidate that type of executive order.
Okay. Okay. That answers that question. Thank you.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. To Councilwoman Finley's remark about, is there any place that we can get people documented? I was very saddened that the school district did away with their adult education classes because that was actually one place that people could go to learn the language and become more on their path to becoming citizens. So that's one thing that we lost. But what you said, when you said that your programs were set up by state that, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, to not serve undocumented people, how do you know they're undocumented? Do you get information from the person coming to receive services? And what do you do with that information?
So for those mayor and council members, for those individuals who are coming directly to the city, so say for our housing services through our CDBG and home, is that that staff does. They do get that documentation. They are required to, and they keep that in the file, so that we have that on file. If individuals aren't able to produce documentation that they are lawfully present to receive services, then we are in a position to deny them services and do our best to try to hook them up with other maybe private organizations that might be able to provide assistance.
And if one of those persons were somebody that ICE was after, would you give that information to ICE?
That would not be our role to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you. I know that your department worked very hard to make sure that all the people affected by the flood found ways to get help, the help that they needed, and it was an emergency, which is also one of the things that is exempt. So when you use the term lawfully present in the United States, I'm not sure what that means, because 80% of the people who are here but are not citizens are lawfully present, or originally were. They came here on a work visa or a visitor's visa. So do you mean that they're not citizens?
So Mayor and Council,
undocumented?
so that basically is the terminology that is in the law, in the federal and state law. Okay. So we use that same terminology as a result.
Yeah.
So yes, we have certainly heard from others. When they see that in their contract, they're like, whatever.
I know.
Why is it in there? But we're just really using the same language that's in the federal and state statutes.
I understand that. But as Councilman Bagley pointed out last week, there are people who were, there's so many different states that people can be in before they become citizens. And so we're all talking different kinds of language and misunderstanding. That's why we're talking tonight. So I liked your idea of community conversations, because there are a lot of people who've come to City Council, and as we know, there's fear on all sides about various things. It would be nice if people could sit down, and I'd be happy to send invitations to all the people who've been sending me angry mail and ask them if they'd like to come down and talk to an actual undocumented person. And anyway, I do think that's a good idea. If we could figure out a way to do that in a compatible ways.
If I could comment on that, certainly, and it's what Chief Butler talked about, that it really is about building relationships between people.
That's right.
And what we found when we coordinated the dialogues on immigrant integration, where we had, it really was intentional that we had people from all different sides of the issue to come together in dialogue. And, I'm not going to say it was everything was perfect, but what we did absolutely find is that when you're in an opportunity to have a conversation and start to build a relationship with someone who maybe you thought differently about before you entered the conversation, we found that it was hard to not like or to continue to hate, if you will, someone that you really had an opportunity to know and get to know that, and what you shared as human beings and shared as members of the community about values and hopes and dreams. And and that was very powerful. It certainly doesn't address all of the challenges, but it was a great start.
Yeah, and anyone, in theory, could do that. We could have anybody initiate, whether a church group or a citizens group. As Chief Butler said, I'd like to, if I can just read what the chief said, because he sort of said some of this and you have echoed this. Our civility with each other is not a function of government policy or political action. We cannot force or mandate goodwill, caring, or connectedness. We cannot legislate our future. In fact, doing so as a town, we lessen our capacity to bring about these very same aspects of community. We become more dependent on government and elected officials to create false insurance policies that people believe will protect us from the human condition and or bring about a sense of belonging. However, as I wrote back, we do as a city have a responsibility to have a consistent written policy that all employees of the city follow, so that people of the citizens of the city do know what our policy is. But I do think that I do thank you for this presentation. I think that's helpful.
I think one of the things I wanted to add, there's been a lot of questions about, do you give information, do you turn information over?
Yes.
Practically speaking, and this is how we handle, we were just thinking almost every case we've seen, is if a law enforcement agency comes to us for information, we require court order. And a lot of that's embedded. The other thing that we have regulating all of us are the privacy laws. So you may remember when we started Next Light, folks were saying, are you going to turn your information over? We require the court order. So even with our own police department, which is an internal piece of our organization, we require them to get a court order if they need to get information from our utility records, our Next Light records. That's what we require.
Okay, that's good to hear about Next Light too, because there are all these city services, because we do have integrated services, and that's the potential for collecting possibly some information, but we don't turn it over.
And I think the other piece too to also talk about it is when we look at all of our rules and procedures, and we have a lot. You have ordinances, you have resolutions, and then we have a whole handbook of police operations manuals. And it's in that police operations manual where they really talk about this is how you're going to act in different circumstances. So, you know, one of the things that we have in the operations manual is this is when and how you will conduct a high-speed chase. And so they have in that manual a set of steps that they have to go through and do that. And so that's typically where when you take those actions where the rubber meets the road, where you'll see those falling in, is in the operations manual. Same thing exists for the rest of the organization. We have a personnel policies that are adopted by code. Right. We have a lot of administrative regulations that are adopted by me, and it's based on different pieces. And I would echo what Chief Butler said. If we had an AR for everything, we would all fill this room up but that is really where the rubber meets the road. And I wanted to tell you that just so from an operational perspective, you could see the different levels that we have in place.
Right.
Well, I think one thing that I totally agree with what Mike Butler said, that I think the biggest part of the solution is getting groups together and having discussions, and even people that think differently than, you know, the majority of us, trying to make those connections is how we're going to solve, you know, 80% of this problem. You know, an example is a story I shared with Mike when Hall Ranch first opened up. You know, you had mountain bikers, runners, and horse people all using the trail. Nobody knew who had the right of way, and everybody was mad at everybody. And the horse people, they had the foresight to have these big, huge barbecues where they invited all the running clubs, all the bike clubs, and explained how horses thought. And it was like after that, we never had a problem. I mean, to this day, everybody loves everybody. Everybody smiles. Everybody's in a good mood. But it took that, you know, group to bring all the groups together to get to a common understanding of who should have the right of way in certain situations. And it was just amazing how effective that type of approach is to solving problems. And I think that has to be part of our solution here. Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I haven't said anything, but I want to make sure I go on the record, because I always go on the record, right? Can't keep my mouth shut. Couple, as I'm sitting here listening for the last few weeks, I just wanted to be clear where I kind of stood on things. First of all, it's a list, and then I've got an idea. And so, first of all, as a local government official with a budget that we have to follow, I'm opposed to unfunded mandates. Period, from the federal government. Don't care what the topic is. Just politically speaking, depending on who's in charge at the federal level, you hear it from the Democrats and the Republicans. But I personally don't think it's ever appropriate. As an attorney and lover of liberty, I also don't think we should detain anyone without a warrant ever. I also don't think that we should unnecessarily ask for papers, meaning that if there's not a reason, meaning if you're asking, according to Karen Roney, for example, if you're seeking services, there's a reason to ask. Other than that, doesn't sound like there is. My faith says we don't want to reject refugees or children seeking protection. As a community leader, I don't want anyone to feel unsafe. Specifically, I want everyone to feel safe from crime. I want everyone to feel human and welcome and loved. As a resident of Longmont, I want all residents to feel safe to report a crime if they're a victim. As a member of this economy, I want undocumented immigrants to be treated fairly by their employers, meaning it's bad economics if you're hired to do a job, whether you've got documentation or not, to not get paid. As a human being, I don't want anyone to feel just unjustified fear of discrimination, period, based on gender, ethnicity, nationality, sexual orientation, or age, or disability. Those are the ones. Thank you. Yes, gender. I do not want non-criminal undocumented immigrants or citizens or documented immigrants deported. If you don't commit a crime, I think you should be okay and feel safe here. However, I also believe that our community is made safer if you do deport undocumented criminals, if they're guilty of sex assault, murder, felonious assault, felony theft, because all members, all little groups in our community, white, documented, citizen, Asian, Bagley, non-Bagley, I don't care who commits the crime, there's punishment. But more importantly, as we heard from Chief Butler, Longmont doesn't determine that. We make arrests, and we send them over to the Boulder County Jail, and the county picks up on that. And so I get a little confused sometimes. So assuming everybody agrees to these things, and many people probably would disagree with a few of them, or maybe, but I learned a while ago, in a past life, I did research and writing with a guy by the name of Jim Collins in Boulder. I don't know if you know who Peter Drucker is. Jim's kind of like the next Peter Drucker. He's brilliant business mind. And he hired me once to do a little bit of research. And I had the opportunity to work with a company named Gillette. And there was a CEO by the name of Coleman Mockler. And they had to make a decision. You guys all use Gillette products. I shave with a Gillette blade still in the morning. And the decision was, do we follow the crowd and do we start making cheap, disposable carbon razors, or do we stick with the high-quality stainless steel? And they debated this within Gillette for years. And there were demands for, you got to choose, Coleman, you got to choose. You got to codify it into company policy. He never codified it. Never codified it. But he did make a decision. He basically turned to the president of the North American Blades Division and said, congratulations, we are making you head of International Blades. That person was the champion for high-quality stainless steel. It wasn't a question of what are we going to do. It was a question of who are we going to have do it. And I just want to point out to everyone here, you've heard some very strong comments. If you're not feeling safe in this community, you heard our Latino city manager, Harold Dominguez, state that you will not gain access to records without a warrant. You heard our public safety chief state quite clearly that we do not ask for documentation. We do not report it. We do not persecute or prosecute based on that. And you even heard our city attorney say we cannot do that even if we wanted to. So personally, I think we're ahead of the game when you listen to other communities and you see what we're doing here locally. I certainly hope no one feels unsafe and unwelcome.
Councilmember Peck.
I'm digesting what Councilman Bagley just said. I'm going to recuse myself from this. Someone else can
Okay. Well, there's nobody else in line. Yeah. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Well, I'm sitting here listening to everything going on, and I think the big thing that sticks to me in my mind is that you can legislate policies, but that doesn't necessarily make people feel safe. And I also believe legislating policies also removes a lot of adaptability to any future policies as times change. So, you know, it's kind of like our community is one of those that follows the credo, talks cheap, takes money to buy whiskey. The currency, the money, is our community and our values. And we apply those community values every day, and we have taken our community from what it was a few years ago with 450 gang members, and now we've got a handful. Our domestic violence has dropped, and this is all because of how we've decided as a community to manage our public safety. And I am really hesitant to impede on that with any formal policies and any ordinances or resolutions, mostly because the more legislation and the more laws you have, the harder it is to maintain compliance. And I think that we're doing the job we need to do, and unfortunately, what the federal government has decided to do is put us in a position where we need to defend our territory and not worry about the rest of the world. We are not going to solve the problems of the nation with our current situation, and we are using our currency wisely. So I know that at any point in time, there will be people that don't feel safe, and what I would prefer us to do is find out how we can do a better job of making people feel safe, and how can we improve our inclusivity in the whole community and not become so divided that we have one side against the other, which is what I really fear, is that we tear the fabric of this community apart. 1980, Dan Benavides is an outstanding example of how our community, in a serious situation, in a community that was ready to go to war, put things back together on a slow path to recovery. It didn't happen overnight, and it's still happening today. And I believe that as a community, we can solve this problem. And it's not, as Chief Butler said, it's not what the police do, it's what we do as a community. So those are my main thoughts, and I would hope that anybody that would like to take this further with me, I'm more than willing to talk to you. Thanks.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I will do my best. I'm not feeling well today. I have a really bad sore throat. I would agree with Councilmember Bagley and Councilmember Moore. Everything that they have said is pretty much right on. It's my hope that, and as Councilmember Moore has said, as we, the city, and the way we have conducted ourselves with staff, show the community what we have been doing, or what we do. I have, even with a change of administration at the top from Gordon Pedro to Harold Dominguez, we still have the same type of relationship with all of the community. Now, what you'll hear is that we've gotten some very interesting email lately, as Councilmember Christensen said. Everyone's entitled to their point of view. That's the best part about living in the United States. And just don't dismiss other people's opinions, because when you do that, you dismiss the person, whether you agree with them or disagree with them. So anyway, I agree with what Councilmember Bagley and Councilmember Moore says. I believe what we are doing currently, we don't need to codify. We have policy already.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you. Now I'm ready. I remember what I wanted to say. I look at it just a little bit differently in that it isn't just our Latino Hispanic community, but it is the people who came up here 2 weeks ago and had horrible, ugly things to say about other human beings in our community. To me, that is more frightening, to be quite honest, than almost anything that hate came out. I knew it was there, but I've never heard it. So for me, the issue is dealing with ICE. That is what I have heard for weeks and months. And I don't see a problem with putting in a resolution just how this city is going to deal with ICE, with no other issue. Because that is what is being asked for. What we resolve to do when ICE comes, and what that means what that means as far as our protection within the city. It's not just for the people sitting in this room. It's for the people who would love to see everyone deported, and that has come out. This is what we're doing. This is what we resolve to do. It's not a law. It's not a regulation. It's just this is what we resolve to do with ICE, and you can count on us for that. Anybody, we represent all of you, so you can come to any of us as well. But again, I don't walk in your shoes, so I have to take what you're telling me as fact. And if it takes for everybody in the city to know what we are going to do with ICE, I see no problem in putting that in a resolution. So, just my thoughts.
Councilmember Bagley?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I mean, I guess one of the things that stood out to me when Chief Butler was talking was not only was he talking from a very emotional, heartfelt level, but there was some real meat in there. For example, he mentioned the 287G programs and how the city doesn't participate. That's huge, right? So I also don't think that, I mean, Dan Benavides came up, and I guess I kind of feel like he does, which is don't rock the boat, but at the same time, we want to accomplish peace, safety, tranquility, etc. So if we need something official, I guess I would move that we essentially publicly get behind and officially adopt the position that Chief Butler has council's sanction to continue doing what he's doing. That's it.
Sorry. So would that be in a resolution or
consensus?
Just consensus.
Just basically dictate to the city that keep doing what you're doing.
Councilmember Christensen.
Well, I don't think we need a resolution for the Chief of Public Safety to keep doing what he's doing. He's going to anyway.
That's true.
But I do think what I would like to, I'm going by my reservation here. So I would like to have some written document because, there is no archive of what goes on here. It's around for 18 months and then it disappears completely. I would like a written statement of the things that were said here by the Chief of Public Safety, by Karen Roney, and by Harold Dominguez, because those are the leaders, those are the people who carry out the policies of the city every day. And these are what people have. This is what people have asked for more than anything. They want to see in writing what these policies are so they can reference them. And so that if they feel that somebody has not followed these policies who's employed by the city, they have some recourse to say, I don't think that's the policy of the city. I would like to also include with that the proposed ordinance so people know what we were reacting to that was put forth by CERC. And I would also like to include policy 123 because that is the resolution to reaffirm our constitutional rights and our community values, which became city policy in December. So that we have a complete package to present to people who ask what our city policy is. These are all very modest and very straightforward things. And it seems to me it would be resolved a lot of things.
Well, I understand why people want this because we, first off, unfortunately, Mike Butler's not going to be here forever. And
yes, right.
So people would want to know what's going to happen after he retires.
Yes.
No clapping.
Or as city manager, Harold.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, it's...
Or Karen.
Well, whatever we do, I would recommend that if we have a resolution or what, that we don't call it a sanctuary city resolution, because that word just gets people so insanely riled up that it's divisive because people don't really want to understand. So anyway, I mean, I don't care what we call it, but just don't call it that.
I'm just asking for a written write-up of what went on tonight and what the chief of public safety stated and what his memo was and what Karen Roney said and what Harold Dominguez said.
Just a document.
And also to include the ordinance that we were reacting to and the proposition we already passed, a city policy.
I could support that.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Mike has a written directive. I would be okay seconding Councilmember Bagley's motion saying that we agree with it. And
absolutely.
You know, he's done a great job. I think you can't legislate people's morality. We know every time we try to do that, it doesn't work out very well, no matter what side you're on. You know, you can have all the great resolutions in the world, but it doesn't change people's hearts. What changes people's hearts are people's actions. And so I would second Councilmember Bagley's motion.
I guess I totally agree with Brian Bagley's motion also. But doesn't mean that I also agree with what Councilmember Christensen is putting forward, that we just document those items. They're not policy. They're just, this is what happened. This is what transpired. Here's what we said at this meeting. And Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I guess just a little clarification on Councilmember Bagley's motion is, is that different from his email instructions to his staff?
No, it just confirms it.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle with this in the way that it's about, we can write this down, someone else can come back and erase it. And that's the way things are with ordinances or resolutions. It does come down to our community actions and how we deal with each other. And if I just really am not seeing that anything changes with a resolution or an ordinance. And a resolution or an ordinance doesn't necessarily mean that we are actually going to follow up with our actions. I mean, it just is really conflicting to me. So I definitely support how Chief Butler's put out his communications to his staff, and that's about as far as I'm interested in taking this.
Councilmember Bagley?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Just to be clear, the reason why I originally made the motion was I liked what I heard. Why wait?
Yeah.
You know, just to be clear. I also think it's a good idea to, just to ask Chief Butler and Karen and Harold, please do a one-page write-up. I ask my employees this all the time. That was a lot of information. Just get me a one-page write-up so I have it succinct and short. It's not an ordinance, it's not a resolution, but when City Council, 4 or more, says that this is going to be the policy of the city, that becomes the policy of the city. Period, full stop. Doesn't matter if it's a resolution, an ordinance, or just all of us going like this to Harold saying, if you don't do what we say, we're going to fire you. And so that's kind of how local government works. And so I guess what I'm thinking is just I want to give the impression to city staff that head nod, motion, whatever it is, that what we heard tonight and the direction that we've been taking for years, we should continue to take. And that will not change if we are so unfortunate as to lose Chief Butler here soon. Knock on wood. And that was the point of my motion. It was not to say that we shouldn't put it in writing. I think that's a great idea. And so there's a lot of concern. Why not act now?
If I may interject, I think what you all are saying in some form or fashion is a ratification of our operational policies.
Yeah,
Right,
ratification of
That's what I'm hearing you say. And so there are ways that we can do that, and it could be as simple as a ratification of the policies, and then we can do the one-page summary.
Okay.
But I'm hearing that from all 7 of you.
Yes.
And that is council direction.
That is council direction.
And so I would see it as a ratification of those, and I can work with Mike and Karen, and we can do a one-page, here's how we work.
So can I withdraw my motion? We'll just wait.
Well, I'll
Yeah.
amend it.
What?
I was going to amend your motion.
Councilmember Peck?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I agree with all of you. We need to do both of it. We need to do outreach, and we need to ratify what Chief Butler's doing already. So I amend your motion to not only give consensus to what Chief Butler has already put out, but that we ratify it in writing in both English and Spanish. And that's my amendment.
But Bonnie's got, she had second, so you've got to get permission to Bonnie to.
I'm not all that wild about writing down, but it's okay.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah, I did friendly amendment.
Okay.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
You can either look at it.
All right. Councilmember Bagley?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. You can either look at it on the video, refer to the minutes, or refer to a one-page synopsis. It's all potato. So I would accept the friendly amendment.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Christensen?
But it does need to be made publicly available, say on our website.
Yeah.
So that, because that's what people want, isn't it? Something in writing that's available permanently.
Councilmember Moore?
Yeah, and to follow up on that a little bit, where's it going to live? Where is it going to live so people can find it? We need to make sure that we decide what, do we know?
See how good it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll need to work with Valerie on that and in the appropriate place.
We want to make sure it's easy to find. It's like our development maps a couple of years ago. You could find them
Yeah,
if you knew how many clicks to make.
Exactly. Actually, I'm thinking of as a cover of our ARs. I can't answer that question, but it will have to live in a place where it can withstand the test of time.
All right, thank you.
So, the other thing I heard from council is creating the community conversations again.
Yes.
That was mentioned by multiple folks here, and so that was the other thing I had on my list.
Right. And it's not just reaching out to the Hispanic community, but it's also reaching out to the entire community so that we can make that connection more broadly, I think.
And not to, I
I'm
don't
not
want
sure
to
how to do
diminish
that.
this. I don't want to diminish the conversation we've had tonight.
Right.
But I would take you back to the retreat where, that was also a broader topic in the retreat of the conversations in the community in general.
Yeah.
And so, but definitely work with Karen and Mike and folks on the community conversation piece, and you'll be seeing that.
I think I can speak for the entire council that I think we all want the same end goal. We want everybody to feel welcomed. We want everybody to feel safe, because when people feel marginalized and vulnerable, I remember when I was down testifying on the wage theft bill, I heard of story after story of people working for 3 weeks for some construction company, but because their employer knew that they were probably illegal, decided not to pay them, and that's the kind of stuff we don't want to happen here. We don't want people to be taken care of and be pushed back into corners and be afraid to come forward. And I think we just need to stand up for those people. And I'm really proud of this city council for all of us agreeing. We don't always agree on how to go from point A to point B, but we always really realize that we want to go from point A to point B. And that's the important thing. We have the same end goal. It's just sometimes we differ on how to get there. So, Councilmember Peck.
Just making a statement about the community conversations. You had a great idea. I think that each of us should have a barbecue for everybody in our ward. Bring us all together.
Yes.
Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I just want to state that this isn't a destination, it's a journey, and I think that that's an overused term, but I'm going to use it anyway. I see this as being a beginning and not an end of this, and it's not a solution. It's a path forward, and I can never really say that I understand completely what individuals go through personally, and I won't pretend to. But I would really like to do what I can to understand that point of view, because I think it makes everybody in the community work together better. So I just want to put that invitation out there.
Councilmember Christensen?
Okay, I'm glad we are going to do this. And I would just like to say that I think it's really tragic that all over the United States, people are being targeted. We are subject to what's going on a national level right now. And so we're trying to fight something that we can't actually fight very well sitting in Longmont. But what we're doing is trying to stand up for people all over the country who know that things are happening, like 100 new ICE agents are being hired for Colorado alone. And in my sister's church, there was a guy who had 3 children and a wife with another child on the way, and he was sent back to Ecuador, having done nothing but worked hard for years. The idea that ICE is targeting bad hombres and people who've committed heinous crimes is not true. They're targeting whoever they can get, and people know that, and that's why they're afraid. But so it's important, even though, yes, we can't legislate morality, but we can stand up for what we know is right, and that's what we're doing. So, but Chief Butler is also right in that there's only so much City Council can do. As a community, though, what we can do is have community barbecues and speak out in any kind of, in the paper, any kind of media outlet about exposing various lies and bigotry. We can arrange safe places through churches. We can offer to come with people to doctor's appointments in schools and court appearances. We can educate people about their rights by passing out ACLU materials, and we can reiterate, as parents of bullied children often have to do, that hatred is a deformity of the hater and not of the victim. Every parent, probably everybody in this room has been bullied, except for the bullies, and you know who you are. And so we've all been hurt, and no matter what it is, whether it's because you have freckles or you're skinny or your skin is darker than somebody else's, there's always a stupid reason for being bullied. And that's something that will always continue. But everybody here who's a parent knows you have to tell your kid, this isn't the way people are. This isn't right. And what's been done to you does not reflect on you. It reflects on them. So that is something that as parents and as friends we do for each other, and we share that with each other. And don't let other people be hurt. Get in between there. So we have to stand together and fight one by one for every human being's right not to be persecuted.
All right, I guess that ends this presentation and all of our comments. So now it's time for Mayor. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, we haven't voted on it. Yeah, I guess we have not. We've got a motion. It's been good catch. Let's vote. We're waiting for your vote. Oh, there it is. Okay, passes 7-0. Thank you.
Mayor, I was going to say, since you all have, a number of folks have mentioned barbecues, one of the things we've actually been tossing around is is the idea of how we create hamburgers and hot dogs in parks and different areas of our communities, but really focusing not on where the city goes and we're presenting information, but where we have folks representing different areas of the organization, but where we just get to know folks and have conversations. So since I've heard that as a consistent theme, that is something that we will be bringing back to you as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, now it's time for mayor and council comments. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Kind of tag on Bonnie's business of the week, if you don't mind. I'd like to talk about Layer 3 and how they've been such a great option for me at my house. When was the last time Comcast sent you chocolate-covered pretzels and a thank you card?
That was a nice touch, wasn't it?
So, I mean, that was just a big surprise, and they're very good service, and I really like having them. So, might want to mention that to Comcast. They could do a little better job of customer service.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I was actually going to do a call out for Layer 3 as well. We're saving $300 a year by changing from Comcast to Layer 3, and the high def is much better.
Yes.
So I suggest everybody do that.
And I guess I want to, Councilmember Christensen.
Two things, although I've forgotten one of them. West Side Tavern is open on 3rd Avenue at long last. Come, have a drink, enjoy yourself. And also Councilman isn't that this Saturday?
What, Topic Council?
Yeah. Councilman Bagley and I will be at the Hour Center, and I'll try to get him to not gesticulate so much that he punches me out, which he almost did last time. It should be fun. Come.
Okay.
The Hour Center at 9 o'clock.
Well, I'd like to also comment on the successful rollout of our composting program and encourage people to go ahead and sign up, and you can actually save some money if you reduce your trash size to the smaller container, and you can even have that picked up every other week if you want. And I think they're diverting like more than 75 tons of stuff from the landfill now, and so it's a great program. It's working well, and I'm thankful that the city has rolled it out. Okay, city manager, any remarks?
No comments, Mayor, Council.
City attorney, any comments?
No comments, Mayor.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned.